The telegram that arrived at the Philadelphia boarding house on a frigid January morning in 1882 promised a new life, but Willa Reynolds knew better than to believe in promises anymore. She stood by the frost-covered window, holding the thin paper between her trembling fingers, reading the words for the third time. A rancher in Wheatland, Wyoming, needed a wife. The arrangement was simple, practical, devoid of sentiment. Samuel Garrett offered room, board, and respectability in exchange for cooking, cleaning, and companionship. Love was never mentioned, never suggested, never expected. "You are making a terrible mistake," her cousin Martha said from across the sparse room they shared. "Mail-order brides are desperate women who end up with desperate men. You will be miserable in that wilderness." Willa turned from the window, studying Martha's pinched expression. Her cousin had taken her in after the factory fire that killed Willa's parents 6 months ago, but the charity came with constant reminders of her burden. At 22, Willa had few prospects in Philadelphia. The textile mills paid barely enough to survive, and respectable positions required references she did not possess. "Perhaps misery in Wyoming will be different from misery here," Willa replied quietly. Martha sniffed. "You will never find love that way. Mail-order brides are purchased like cattle. The men who send for them are too old, too cruel, or too poor to attract wives properly." Willa folded the telegram carefully and placed it in her pocket. "I am not looking for love. I am looking for survival." 3 weeks later, Willa stood on the platform of the Wheatland train station, her single carpetbag clutched in both hands, scanning the sparse crowd for a man she had never seen. The Wyoming wind cut through her Philadelphia coat like it was made of paper, and the vast emptiness of the landscape made her stomach clench with doubt. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still white with winter snow, and the town itself consisted of perhaps 24 buildings scattered along a wide dirt road. "Miss Reynolds." Willa turned toward the voice and found herself looking up into the bluest eyes she had ever seen. The man was tall, broad-shouldered beneath his heavy coat, with dark hair that needed cutting and a face weathered by sun and wind. He held his hat in his hands, and something in his expression made her breath catch. Not cruelty, not coldness, but a deep, aching loneliness that mirrored her own. Samuel Garrett was perhaps 30, with strong features and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. When their eyes met, something passed between them that Willa could not name, something that made her forget the cold, the fear, the warnings. "Yes," she managed. "Mr. Garrett." He nodded, and the corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been a smile if he had not looked so uncertain. "Welcome to Wheatland. I hope your journey was not too difficult." "It was long," Willa admitted, "but I am grateful to be here." Samuel reached for her bag, his fingers briefly brushing hers, and Willa felt warmth spread through her despite the frigid air. "My wagon is just here. The ranch is about an hour outside town. I have supplies to load if you would like to wait somewhere warm." "I can help," Willa said quickly, not wanting to be separated from him, though she could not explain why. They worked together in companionable silence, loading flour, sugar, coffee, and other necessities into the back of a sturdy wagon. Samuel moved with quiet efficiency, but Willa noticed how his eyes kept finding her, as if he too was trying to make sense of whatever had sparked between them on that platform. The ride to the ranch gave them time to talk, though conversation came haltingly at first. Samuel told her about the ranch, 500 acres of grassland with cattle and horses, a modest house he had built himself 3 years ago. His parents had died of influenza the previous winter, leaving him alone with more work than one person could manage. "I know this arrangement is unusual," he said, guiding the horses along a rutted road. I want you to know that I will respect you. You will have your own room, your own space. I am looking for a partner, not a servant." Willa studied his profile, the strong line of his jaw, the way his hands held the reins with gentle confidence. "Why did you not find a wife here in Wyoming?" Samuel was quiet for a long moment. "I tried. There are not many unmarried women in these parts, and those who are here have their pick of suitors. I'm not much for socializing or pretty words. I suppose I am better with horses than people." "I understand that feeling," Willa said softly. "I was never good at saying what people wanted to hear." He glanced at her then, and something warm flickered in those blue eyes. "Maybe that is why this might work. We can be honest with each other." The ranch appeared as they crested a hill, a sturdy log house with a covered porch, a large barn, and several outbuildings scattered across the valley. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Willa felt an unexpected surge of emotion. It looked like a home, something she had not had since the fire. Samuel helped her down from the wagon, his hands steady at her waist, and Willa was acutely aware of his strength, his nearness. "It is not fancy," he said, almost apologetically. "It is beautiful," Willa replied, and meant it. Inside, the house was clean but clearly lacking a woman's touch. The main room held a stone fireplace, a simple table with 2 chairs and a worn sofa. The kitchen was well stocked but organized with masculine practicality rather than comfort. Samuel showed her to a small bedroom with a narrow bed, a dresser, and a window overlooking the mountains. "This is yours," he said from the doorway. "I am across the hall. Take your time settling in. There is no rush." But as he turned to leave, Willa found herself speaking. "Samuel," he stopped, looking back at her with such open hopefulness that her heart ached. "Thank you," she said, "for giving me a chance." "Thank you for taking it," he replied quietly and closed the door. That first evening set the pattern for the weeks that followed. Willa took over the cooking and cleaning, but Samuel insisted on helping with everything, working alongside her rather than leaving her to toil alone. He taught her about the ranch, introducing her to the horses he loved, showing her how to recognize different cattle, explaining his plans for expanding the herd. But more than that, they talked. In the evenings after dinner, they sat by the fire and shared their stories. Samuel spoke of growing up on this land, of his dreams to make something lasting, of the loneliness that had driven him to send that telegram. Willa told him about Philadelphia, about the fire, about Martha's warnings that mail-order brides never find love. "You believe her?" Samuel asked one night, his eyes reflecting the firelight. Willa considered the question carefully. They had been married by the circuit preacher 3 days after her arrival, a simple ceremony with 2 witnesses from town, but they had not yet consummated the marriage. Samuel had been perfectly respectful, never pushing, never demanding, always waiting. "I am beginning to think," Willa said slowly, "that Martha was wrong about many things." Samuel leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I need to be honest with you, Willa. I did not expect this." "Expect what?" "To care so much." His voice was rough with emotion. "I thought this would be a practical arrangement, companionship, partnership, nothing more. But from that first moment on the platform, I have not been able to stop thinking about you. I know it has only been a few weeks, but I need you to know that you are not just a convenience to me. You are becoming something more." Willa's heart pounded so hard she thought he must hear it. "I feel it too," she whispered. "I did not come here looking for love, but Samuel, I think I am finding it anyway." He stood and crossed to where she sat, kneeling beside her chair and taking her hands in his. "Then we are both fools," he said with a smile that transformed his serious face. "Fools who answered a telegram and found more than we bargained for." Willa reached up and touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw, and Samuel turned his head to kiss her palm. The tenderness of the gesture undid something in her chest, and when he stood and drew her up with him, she went willingly into his arms. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, two people learning the shape of something new and precious. But it deepened quickly, weeks of restrained longing finally given permission to bloom. Samuel held her like she was valuable, like she mattered, and Willa found herself kissing him back with all the emotion she had been holding inside. "Willa," he breathed against her lips, "I want this to be real. Not just on paper, but in every way." "Yes," she said simply, and let him lead her to his room. Their lovemaking that night was a revelation, passionate and tender by turns, two lonely people finding solace and joy in each other. Samuel was patient and attentive, and Willa discovered that desire could be paired with care, that physical intimacy could deepen emotional connection rather than diminish it. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow, Willa felt something settle in her soul. This was home. Not just the ranch, not just Wyoming, but here, with this man who had proven all of Martha's warnings wrong. "I love you," Samuel said into the darkness. "I know it is fast, but I cannot deny it anymore." "I love you too," Willa replied, and felt him relax beneath her, as if he had been holding his breath waiting for her answer. Spring came to Wyoming with dramatic suddenness, the snow melting to reveal green grass and wildflowers scattered across the hills like scattered gems. The ranch work intensified as calving season began, and Willa found herself working beside Samuel from dawn until dusk, learning to tend the new calves, mend fences, and manage the endless tasks that kept a ranch running. But she also found joy in the small domestic pleasures she had never experienced before. She planted a kitchen garden, coaxing vegetables from the rich soil. She made curtains for the windows, transforming the stark house into something warmer and more welcoming. She learned to ride, and Samuel gave her a gentle mare named Daisy who became her constant companion on rides across their land. The people of Wheatland gradually accepted her as well. The town was small, perhaps 300 souls, and everyone knew everyone else's business. Willa met other ranch wives at the general store, women who had also come west seeking better lives, some as mail-order brides like herself. They formed a quiet community, supporting each other through the hardships of frontier life. But not everyone was welcoming. One afternoon in late April, Willa was in the general store when she overheard two women talking behind the fabric display. "Samuel Garrett must have been desperate to send for a wife from back east," one said, her voice dripping with disdain. "Martha Patterson turned him down twice." "Well, Martha married well enough," the other replied. "At least she did not have to resort to being purchased like livestock." Willa felt her face flush hot, but before she could respond, a firm hand touched her elbow. She turned to find Samuel beside her, his expression dark with anger. "Mrs. Henderson, Mrs. Crawford," he said coldly, addressing the two women who had gone pale at being caught. "My wife may have come here through unconventional means, but she is worth 10 of you in kindness, intelligence, and grace. I suggest you keep your opinions to yourself, or you will find your credit at this store suddenly unavailable." The women gasped, but Samuel owned shares in the general store, and his threat carried weight. They scurried out without another word, and Willa found herself fighting tears, overwhelmed by his fierce defense of her. "You did not have to do that," she said quietly. Samuel pulled her close, uncaring of who might see. "Yes, I did. You are my wife, and I love you. Anyone who disrespects you disrespects me." "I love you too," Willa whispered against his chest. "So much." They finished their shopping and rode home in companionable silence, but that night, as they lay together in the darkness, Willa voiced the fear that had been growing in her heart. "What if I cannot give you children?" she asked softly. Samuel rolled to face her, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. Then we will have each other, and that will be enough. But you need someone to carry on the ranch, to inherit what you are building. I need you, Samuel said firmly. Everything else is secondary. Do not borrow trouble, love. We will face whatever comes together. 2 months later, Willa's monthly courses failed to arrive, and by midsummer she was certain. She waited until evening, until they were alone on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold and crimson, before telling him. Samuel, I have news. He looked at her, and something in her expression must have given it away because his eyes widened. Willa. I am with child, she said, and watched joy transform his face. He pulled her into his arms, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around, laughing with pure happiness. A baby, he said wonderingly. We are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Willa asked, though she could see the answer in every line of his body. Happy, Samuel set her down carefully, his hands moving to rest on her still flat stomach. Willa, I did not think I could be happier than I was already, but you keep proving me wrong. You are the greatest gift I have ever received, and now you are giving me another. The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the summer and into fall. Willa continued working as long as she was able, though Samuel became increasingly protective, insisting she rest more, worry less, let him handle the heavier tasks. The other ranch wives rallied around her, sharing advice and hand-me-down baby clothes, welcoming her fully into their community now that she was carrying one of their own. In October, a traveling photographer came through Wheatland, and Samuel insisted on having their picture taken. They stood together on the porch of their home, Willa's pregnancy visible now in the swell of her belly, Samuel's arm around her waist, both of them looking at the camera with expressions of quiet contentment. I want our child to see how happy we were, Samuel explained. I want them to know that their parents loved each other from the very beginning. Winter arrived early that year, with the first snow falling in November. The ranch work slowed, and Samuel spent more time inside, building a cradle from pine wood, sanding it smooth and carving delicate flowers into the headboard. Willa sewed tiny gowns and knitted blankets, and they talked for hours about names, about hopes, about the life their child would have. Boy or girl, it does not matter to me, Samuel said one evening, his hand resting on Willa's belly where the baby kicked and rolled. As long as they are healthy and they have your kindness. And your strength, Willa added, covering his hand with hers. Your integrity and your courage. I was not courageous, Samuel said quietly. I was lonely and desperate when I sent that telegram. You were courageous to take a chance on a stranger, Willa insisted. You were courageous to open your heart when you had no guarantee I would treasure it. He kissed her then, long and deep, and Willa felt the baby kick between them, as if already eager to be part of this love they were building. The baby came in late February during a howling blizzard that trapped them at the ranch for days. The midwife from town could not reach them, and Samuel had to deliver their son himself, his hands steady despite his fear, his voice calm as he coached Willa through each contraction. When the baby finally emerged, squalling and red-faced and perfect, Samuel placed him on Willa's chest with tears streaming down his face. A son, he said hoarsely. We have a son. They named him William, after Willa's father, and Samuel cradled him with such tenderness that Willa fell in love with her husband all over again. He was a devoted father from that first moment, changing diapers and walking the floor at night, singing off key lullabies and refusing to let Willa shoulder the burden alone. You gave him life, Samuel said during one of those long nights, the baby finally sleeping in his arms. The least I can do is help care for him. As William grew from infant to toddler, The ranch prospered. Samuel's careful management and Willa's frugal household practices allowed them to expand their herd and improve their buildings. They hired a ranch hand named Tom Cooper, a quiet man in his 50s who had lost his own family to cholera and appreciated the warm welcome he received at the Garrett Ranch. Willa wrote to Martha in Philadelphia, including the photograph from the previous year and a long letter about her life. The reply, when it came months later, was grudging but genuine. "You have proven me wrong," Martha wrote. "I am glad you found happiness, though I still think you took a terrible risk. Perhaps some mail-order brides do find love after all." When William was 2 years old, Willa discovered she was pregnant again. This time, Samuel was even more protective, insisting she do nothing strenuous, hiring a woman from town to help with the housework, despite Willa's protests that she was perfectly capable. "I almost lost you with William," Samuel said quietly one evening. "The birth was hard and you bled so much. I cannot go through that again without doing everything possible to keep you safe." Willa had not realized how frightened he had been, how close she had come to leaving him. She stopped arguing and accepted the help, focusing on staying healthy for the baby and for the husband who loved her so desperately. Their daughter was born on a bright May morning, the delivery easier than William's had been. Samuel wept again when he held her, this tiny girl with Willa's dark hair and his blue eyes, and declared she was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen besides her mother. They named her Rose, and she proved to be a sunny, easy baby who rarely cried and smiled at everyone. William adored his little sister, hovering over her cradle and bringing her his favorite toys, and Willa's heart swelled to see her children growing up with the love and stability she had never known. The years passed in a blur of seasons and milestones. The ranch continued to prosper, becoming one of the most successful in the county. Samuel bought more land, built a larger barn, and earned a reputation as a fair dealer and honest man. Willa became a pillar of the Wheatland community, organizing church socials and helping new arrivals settle into frontier life. They added 2 more children to their family, another son named James and a daughter called Grace. The house expanded to accommodate them all, with Samuel building additional rooms and a second story. What had started as a bachelor's dwelling became a warm, welcoming home filled with laughter and love. On their 10th anniversary, Samuel took Willa into town for a proper celebration, leaving the children with Tom Cooper and his new wife Ellen. They had dinner at the hotel restaurant, a luxury they rarely indulged, and afterward walked through the streets of Wheatland arm in arm. "Do you ever regret it?" Samuel asked as they paused to look at the stars scattered across the vast Wyoming sky. "Coming here, marrying a stranger, giving up your old life?" Willa turned to face him, this man who had proven every dire prediction wrong, who had given her a life richer than she had ever imagined possible. "My only regret is that I did not come sooner. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, Samuel Garrett." He kissed her there in the street, uncaring of propriety or who might see, and Willa kissed him back with all the passion of their first night together. A decade of love and partnership and devotion in that single gesture. "That telegram was the bravest thing I ever did," Samuel said when they finally pulled apart. "Sending for a mail-order bride, hoping she would not hate me or the isolation or the hard work." "That telegram saved my life," Willa replied, "and gave me everything I did not know I needed. A home, a family, and a love that proves Martha wrong every single day." They walked back to the wagon hand in hand and drove home through the moonlit darkness. The house was quiet when they arrived, the children asleep, and they made love with the ease of long practice and the passion that had never dimmed. celebrating the life they had built together from one telegram and one glance. As Willa lay in Samuel's arms afterward, listening to his steady breathing as he slept, she thought about the woman she had been on that Philadelphia platform, frightened and uncertain, convinced that mail-order brides never find love. How wrong she had been. How gloriously, wonderfully wrong. Love had found her in Samuel's blue eyes, in his calloused hands, in his quiet devotion. Love had grown through shared work and whispered conversations, and the gradual intertwining of two separate lives into one. Love had multiplied with each child, each challenge overcome, each moment of joy or sorrow experienced together. The years continued to unfold with the rhythm of ranch life. William grew tall and strong, helping his father with the cattle and showing a natural talent for horsemanship. Rose proved to have a gift for numbers, managing the household accounts with precision that impressed even the bank manager in town. James inherited his father's quiet nature and his mother's kindness, always the first to help a neighbor or comfort a crying sibling. Grace, the baby, was wild and free, racing across the prairie on her pony and bringing home injured animals for her mother to heal. Samuel's hair began to gray at his temples, and fine lines appeared around Willa's eyes, but their love only deepened with time. They still sat on the porch each evening when weather permitted, watching the sunset and talking about their day. They still reached for each other in the night, seeking comfort and connection. They still looked at each other with wonder sometimes, amazed at how a telegram and a train ride had led to this rich, full life. When William turned 18, Samuel officially made him a partner in the ranch, recognizing his contributions and ensuring the legacy they had built would continue. The ceremony was simple, just the family gathered in the parlor, but Samuel's voice shook with emotion as he spoke. "Your mother and I started with nothing but hope and determination," he said, looking at each of his children in turn. "We built this ranch together, through droughts and hard winters, through lean years and prosperous ones. But the ranch is not our greatest achievement. You are. You four are the legacy we are most proud of." Willa reached for his hand, her eyes bright with tears, and their children gathered around them, a tangle of arms and love and gratitude. That night, alone in their room, Samuel pulled Willa close. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "For answering that telegram. For taking a chance on a lonely cowboy. For giving me everything." Willa smiled against his chest. "You gave me everything too. You proved them all wrong, Samuel. Everyone who said mail-order brides never find love, that it was a business arrangement, that I would be miserable. You proved that love can start with a glance and grow into something that sustains a lifetime." "It was not just me," Samuel insisted. "It was us, both of us choosing to be open, to be honest, to take the risk." "Then we both proved them wrong," Willa said, and kissed him with all the love of 20 years together and the promise of however many more they would be granted. Rose married at 19, a young rancher named David Morris, who reminded Willa of Samuel in his quiet integrity and steady devotion. The wedding was held at the ranch, with the entire community in attendance, and Willa watched her daughter pledge her life to her chosen partner with joy, and only a small twinge of sadness at letting her go. "She will be fine," Samuel assured her, his arm around her waist as they watched the young couple dance. "She learned from the best example of what a marriage should be." James decided to study law, traveling east to attend university, though he promised to return to Wyoming and practice there. His departure left a hole in the household, but Willa was proud of his ambition and determination to make his own way. Grace showed no interest in settling down, preferring to work the ranch alongside William and help their father train horses. She was 21 and fiercely independent, and Willa worried sometimes about her youngest finding her place in the world. "Give her time," Samuel counseled. "Not everyone follows the same path." He was right, as he so often was. When Grace was 23, she met a veterinarian who came to tend a sick mare, and within 6 months they were engaged. The man, Robert Shaw, appreciated Grace's spirit and unconventional ways, and they planned to work together caring for animals across the territory. William brought home a bride of his own when he was 25, a schoolteacher from Cheyenne named Catherine, who charmed them all with her intelligence and warm heart. She and William built a house on the northern section of the ranch, and within a year, Willa and Samuel became grandparents. Holding her grandson for the first time, Willa was overwhelmed with gratitude for the life she had been given. If she had listened to Martha, if she had been too afraid to answer that telegram, none of this would exist. Not this ranch, not these children and grandchildren, not this deep, abiding love she shared with Samuel. "What are you thinking?" Samuel asked, finding her on the porch with the baby asleep in her arms. "That I am the luckiest woman alive," Willa replied. That one decision, one leap of faith, led to all of this. Samuel sat beside her, his arm going around her shoulders, and together they looked out over the land they had built into a legacy. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, and somewhere in the distance, cattle lowed peacefully. "You remember what you said that first day?" Samuel asked. "When I asked if the journey was difficult, I said it was long, but I was grateful to be here." "I knew then," Samuel said softly. "Something in your voice, in your eyes. I knew you were going to change my life." "We changed each other's lives," Willa corrected. "We saved each other." More grandchildren followed over the years, filling the ranch with noise and laughter and the beautiful chaos of a growing family. Willa taught them to bake, to garden, to find joy in simple things. Samuel taught them to ride, to work hard, to treat everyone with respect. Together, they modeled what love looked like after decades of partnership, still holding hands, still stealing kisses, still choosing each other every single day. On their 25th anniversary, the entire family gathered for a celebration. The house overflowed with children and grandchildren, with friends and neighbors, with people whose lives Willa and Samuel had touched over the years. Tables groaned under platters of food, and music filled the air as people danced and laughed and shared stories. But the moment Willa treasured most came late in the evening, when she and Samuel slipped away to the barn, seeking a moment of quiet together. They climbed to the hayloft, just as they had done so many times over the years when they needed to escape and be alone, and sat looking out over their land bathed in moonlight. 25 years, Samuel mused. It seems like both forever and no time at all. "I would do it all again," Willa said. "Every moment, every hardship, every joy, all of it as long as it was with you." Samuel turned to her, his blue eyes still clear and bright despite the years. "You are even more beautiful now than you were on that train platform." Willa laughed. "You are a terrible liar." "I am not lying," Samuel insisted. "Then you were beautiful but frightened. Now you are beautiful and confident and radiant with all the love we have built. You are my Willa and you are perfect." She kissed him then, there in the hayloft where they had stolen so many kisses over the years, and felt the same spark she had felt that first time. Love had not diminished with time. It had only grown deeper, richer, more essential to her survival than air or water. "Thank you for proving them wrong," Willa whispered against his lips. "For showing me that mail-order brides can find love, that one glance can change everything, that taking a risk can lead to the greatest happiness." "Thank you for taking that risk," Samuel replied. "For getting on that train, for trusting me, for building this life with me." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead, until voices calling their names drew them back to the celebration. But Willa carried that moment with her, a crystallized memory of perfect contentment, of love tested and proven over decades. The years continued their steady march. Willa's hair turned silver, and Samuel's back grew stiffer from decades of hard work. They slowed down gradually, handing more responsibility to William and his family, spending more time with their grandchildren, enjoying the fruits of their labor. But they never stopped loving each other with the intensity of that first year. They never took each other for granted, never let resentment fester, never forgot how lucky they were to have found each other across the miles and the uncertainty. When Willa was 65, she fell ill with pneumonia during a particularly harsh winter. Samuel barely left her bedside, holding her hand and talking to her through the fever, refusing to let her slip away from him. The doctor from town was pessimistic, but Samuel would not accept defeat. "You do not get to leave me," he told her fiercely during one of her lucid moments. "I need you too much. Our grandchildren need you. We have more sunsets to watch, more anniversaries to celebrate. Stay with me, Willa. Please stay." And she did. She fought through the fever and the weakness, driven by her love for this man who had given her everything, who had proven that mail-order brides could find not just love but enduring, sustaining, life-changing love. When she finally recovered, Samuel held her so tightly she could barely breathe, his face buried in her hair. "I cannot lose you," he said brokenly. "You are my heart, Willa. I would not survive without you." "You will not have to," she promised, though they both knew that eventually one of them would have to face that loss. Not for a long time yet. They were granted another decade together, years of watching their grandchildren grow and marry and have children of their own. Great-grandchildren climbed on their laps and begged for stories, and Willa and Samuel obliged, telling tales of the old days, of building the ranch from nothing, of love that started with a telegram and a train ride. "Tell us about when you first met," one of the great-grandchildren asked. A little girl with Willa's dark hair and Samuel's blue eyes. Samuel looked at Willa, and they shared a smile full of decades of shared memory. "I saw her on the train platform," Samuel said, "and I knew in that first glance that she was going to be everything to me." "Did you know too, great-grandmother?" the child asked. Willa thought back to that cold January day, to the fear and uncertainty, to the way Samuel's blue eyes had met hers and sparked something she had not expected. "I knew he was different," she said slowly. "I knew he was worth the risk, and I was right." On their 50th anniversary, when Willa was 72 and Samuel was 80, their children organized another celebration. But this one was quieter, more intimate. Just the immediate family gathered at the ranch house that had been the center of their life together for half a century. Rose stood and raised her glass. "To my parents," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "who proved that love can start in the most unexpected ways and grow into something that inspires everyone around them. You taught us what partnership looks like, what devotion means, what it is to choose someone every day for 50 years. 50 years, Samuel echoed, looking at Willa with wonder. "It seems impossible." 50 years, Willa agreed, reaching for his hand. "And I would do 50 more if we were granted them." They were not granted 50 more, but they were given 3 additional years of quiet contentment. Years of sitting on the porch watching sunsets, of telling stories to great-grandchildren, of simply being together. The ranch was in good hands now, run by William and his sons, and Willa and Samuel could finally rest, enjoying the legacy they had built. Samuel died peacefully in his sleep one night in early spring, 3 months shy of his 83rd birthday. Willa woke to find him gone, his hand still clasped in hers, a faint smile on his weathered face. The grief was crushing, a physical pain in her chest, but beneath it was gratitude. Gratitude for 53 years together, for the life they had built, for the love that had sustained them both. The funeral drew people from across the territory, all of them wanting to pay respects to a man who had been a pillar of the community. But it was William's eulogy that captured who Samuel had really been. "My father was a quiet man," William said, his voice steady despite his tears. He was not given to grand gestures or flowery speeches, but he showed his love every day in 1,000 small ways. The way he looked at my mother, the way he treated everyone with respect, the way he built something lasting and good. He proved that you do not need to be rich or famous to live a meaningful life. You just need to love well and work hard and treat people right. After the service, after the crowds had dispersed, and the family had returned to their own homes, Willa sat alone on the porch, wrapped in Samuel's coat, breathing in the faint scent of him that still clung to the fabric. The sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of gold and crimson, and she could almost feel him beside her, his arm around her shoulders, his voice low and warm as he talked about the day. "You proved them wrong," she whispered to the gathering darkness. "You proved that mail-order brides can find love, that one glance can change everything, that a telegram can lead to 53 years of happiness. Thank you, my love. Thank you for taking a chance on me." The wind picked up, rustling through the grass, and Willa closed her eyes and let herself remember. That first moment on the train platform, the spark of recognition, the gradual unfolding of love. The children, the laughter, the hard work and harder times, all made bearable because they faced them together. The ordinary, extraordinary life they had built from nothing but hope and determination and love. Willa lived for another 2 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who adored her. She remained sharp and engaged, still telling stories, still offering advice, still the beating heart of the family Samuel had started when he sent that telegram all those years ago. When she died quietly one summer evening, sitting in her chair on the porch watching the sunset, everyone agreed it was fitting. She had gone the same way Samuel had, peacefully and without suffering, ready to be reunited with the man who had been her everything. They buried her beside Samuel on a hill overlooking the ranch, under a cottonwood tree that had been just a sapling when they first arrived. The headstone was simple but perfect. Willa and Samuel Garrett, beloved parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. Proof that love can start with a glance and last forever. At the funeral, Rose stood before the gathered crowd and told the story her mother had loved to tell. "My mother was a mail-order bride," she said, her voice carrying across the assembled family. "She came west on a train, terrified and uncertain, because people told her she had no other choice. They told her that mail-order brides never find love, that it was a business arrangement, that she would be alone and miserable." Rose paused, looking at the faces around her, at the descendants of that brave decision her mother had made so long ago. "But my father proved them wrong. From the moment they met on that train platform, from that first glance they shared, he loved her with everything he had. And she loved him back just as fiercely. They built this ranch, this family, this legacy, all from one telegram and the courage to take a chance on love." She gestured to the crowd, to the dozens of people who existed because Willa had gotten on that train. "We are all here because my mother was brave enough to risk everything for a chance at something better. Because my father was lonely enough to send for a stranger and wise enough to see her worth from the first moment. Because they both believed that love was possible, even when everyone said it was not. So today, We do not just mourn their passing," Rose continued, tears streaming down her face. "We celebrate their life together. We celebrate the love they found, the family they created, the example they set. We celebrate the proof they offered that mail-order brides can find love, that one glance can change everything, that taking a risk can lead to the greatest happiness." As the sun set over the Wyoming mountains, casting long shadows across the valley where Willa and Samuel had built their life, their descendants gathered close. They told stories and shared memories, and marveled at the legacy two people had created from one telegram and one moment of recognition. William stood at his parents' grave long after everyone else had left, his hand resting on his mother's headstone. He thought about the stories she had told him as a child, about the fear she had felt arriving in Wheatland, about the way his father had looked at her and made her believe that everything would be all right. "You did well, Ma," he said softly. "You and Pa, you showed us all what love looks like, what partnership means, what it is to build something that lasts." The wind whispered through the cottonwood leaves, and William could have sworn he heard his mother's voice carried on it, full of warmth and contentment. "We were happy," the wind seemed to say. "From that first glance to the very end, we were so very happy." And they had been. Through 53 years of marriage, through children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, through prosperity and hardship, through ordinary days and extraordinary moments, Willa and Samuel had proven that love could flourish in the most unexpected places. They had proven that mail-order brides could find not just love, but enduring, life-changing, soul-deep love. That one glance could spark a connection that lasted a lifetime, that a telegram sent in loneliness and desperation could lead to the greatest happiness imaginable. The ranch continued to thrive under William's stewardship, passing down through generations of Garretts. Each one told the story of their ancestors who had started it all. The photograph from their 10th anniversary hung in the parlor, Willa and Samuel looking out at their descendants with expressions of quiet contentment, proof that they had found what everyone said was impossible. And on summer evenings, when the sun set over the Wyoming mountains and painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson, you could sometimes see two figures sitting on the porch of the old house, their hands clasped, their heads bent together, watching the day end in peaceful companionship. The current occupants of the house always said it brought them comfort, that reminder that love like Willa and Samuel's did not really die. It lived on in the stories passed down, in the family that carried their blood and their values, in the ranch that stood as testament to what two people could build together. Martha in Philadelphia had been wrong about so many things, but she had admitted it in the end, in letters to her cousin that spoke of grudging admiration for the life Willa had built. Mail-order brides could find love. They could find partnership and respect and joy. They could find everything that conventional courtship promised and more, because the foundation was built on honesty and choice rather than social expectation. Willa and Samuel's story became something of a legend in Wheatland and the surrounding territory. Young women contemplating similar journeys west found encouragement in the tale of the Philadelphia bride who found love with a lonely rancher. Young men looking for partners took heart from Samuel's example, learning that honest devotion could win a woman's heart more surely than wealth or status. But for their family, it was simply the truth of who their ancestors had been. Two people who took a chance on each other and found everything they had been looking for. Two souls who recognized each other in a glance and chose each other every day for the rest of their lives. Two hearts that proved love could start with a telegram and last forever. The cottonwood tree on the hill grew tall and strong, its roots deep in Wyoming soil, its branches reaching toward the endless sky. And beneath it, Willa and Samuel rested together, just as they had lived together, their love story complete. A story that began with fear and hope, that flourished through dedication and devotion, that proved once and for all that mail-order brides could indeed find love, and that one glance from the right person could change absolutely everything.